With Vijay Sankaran. He is CIO of TD Ameritrade, and we're here to talk about innovation. Hi, Vijay. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, Larry. It's great to be here.
So, walk me through how you approach innovation at TD Ameritrade as a CIO.
Yeah, so I think innovation at TD Ameritrade has been something that's been evolving for several years. It actually started out, back in 2013 when I first got here, and I was chartered to build our advanced technology team here in Ann Arbor, Michigan, where I'm based out of. And so, we really wanted to instill sort of a culture of experimentation and play around with some new technologies and figure out, how do we launch those into the business. So really bringing in some experimentation, some knowledge of new and emerging technologies was critical to how we've evolved innovation. From there, the big change for us as an organization was our move to agile, which I sponsored starting in 2016. And so we went from literally 5% of our development teams being agile to over 80% of our development teams being agile over a 2-year period. And what that did is it freed up a ton of capacity across the organization where, people felt like they actually had the space to breathe and innovate new ideas. And so, we were able to take a lot of the experimentation that we were doing with advanced tech, pair it up with our agile teams and actually bring some innovative solutions to market. So there were 3 core areas that we were focused around. So I mentioned, advanced technology and doing things with artificial intelligence and virtual reality and different things. The second area is a team we built called Emerging Tech, which is Emerging Technology and Strategic Partnerships. And we experimented in the domain around smart interfaces. So we launched our first app on Facebook Messenger. That's a conversational bot that we had on Facebook Messenger. We've now launched a trading app on Amazon Echo. And then we've also launched apps today, actually, with Google Assistant, and we're launching an in-car podcast app in the next couple of months here across all of the major auto platforms. And so that's personally exciting to me as an auto guy. And then the third area that we focused on is really our incubator called Disco Tech, which is a fun name. And what Disco Tech is really doing is exploring some adjacencies using a discovery process, really sort of a VC type of a model that we can, really go after some ideas in some new spaces like the millennial spaces and things like that that are not core to our traditional business, but are new areas of exploration for us. And this is all kind of weaved together with what we call as our enterprise innovation framework that's taking learnings across all these areas and then reinfusing them back into our core business to teach our core lines of business actually how to be innovators, how to think about innovation, and then partner with these other teams to launch innovative ideas within their businesses.
How do you go about evaluating these things once they get off the ground? Is it something like trading volume, revenue? I guess how do you measure success for these?
Yeah, so we've got a structured discovery and validation process. So, that involves connecting with potential clients, existing clients to understand whether if we had a solution like this, it would be something that is of value to them. We also look at macro level trends like how many people are using Alexa type devices, for example, how many people are in Facebook Messenger community, are some of our competitors launching in that community, what's sort of the transaction volume of revenue in that community. We tend to focus a little bit less around like hard business cases in the innovation sense, because some of it is going to be an evolution. We try to size out what we would call is the target addressable market that we can go after, and whether or not we can deliver a solution that could create value for the consumers in that marketplace. And then we'll build out a hypothesis based upon it. We'll do some minimum viable products that will deliver, and then we'll test and learn and evolve from there, with a full recognition that some of these things are going to stick, and some of these things are going to grow like wildfire, and then some of them we're going to have to kill. So you think about it as a portfolio of bets, each of which has a hypothesis, each of which we evaluate. Some of them are going to be singles, some of them are doubles, a few of them are triples, and even fewer are home runs. And then there are going to be a bunch of strikeouts along the way too. So what we're measuring is the overall, effectiveness of the portfolio.
So something like trading through a smart speaker. Do you look at, e-commerce as sort of a beacon to try that? Or I guess what's the thought process through that, other than it's becoming...
Yeah, and I think what we looked at there is just the sheer number of devices that were being purchased, over the last 12 to 18 months, through Amazon, specifically around on the Echo. And if you look at it, it's millions of units of Echoes have now shipped to homes all across the United States. And so clearly there's a defined population of potential clients that want to have market information on demand. And then you just look at the patterns of information access, which, whether it's the weather or whether it's traffic patterns or whether it's, Wikipedia type questions, the expansive capabilities of an Echo device, continue to grow. And so, and then having seen the skill ecosystem being developed around that, it's sort of like, okay, what can you monetize there and really show a first mover advantage on? So some of these, the way I would characterize it, aren't sort of high volume, high revenue types of solutions, but they're more first mover, demonstrate the capability, show sort of, hey, where we're headed from an innovation perspective, get some additional feedback from the clients. But really what I would say is, in the case of the Echo, it's more of there's a market penetration of a particular type of technology, or there's a consumer opportunity there that, we could bring something to market quickly, leveraging our existing technologies that shows that, hey, we're really on the forefront of innovation with some of these things.
Okay, so something like a smart speaker and TD Ameritrade, it would be more about providing information and being a source for data and information, or would you conduct a trade through it, like say,
specifically on the Amazon Echo, you can actually conduct a trade through it. The reality of it is that we've seen very little activity around that particular function of it. More of the activity is around information like balances and positions, stock quotes, market summaries, all of those sorts of things, because I think people still see the smart speakers as more of a open public sort of information access mechanism, and I think clients would still see the actual act of placing a trade or an order or a money movement as more of a private activity that's not verbal in nature. I mean, I think it's the same that you see with a lot of transactions. You see less people reordering stuff on Echoes. You see less people ordering Domino's pizzas on Echoes. The number of people who are comfortable doing that on smartphones still far supersedes, almost to 100%, the ones that do that on a smart speaker. So I think it's just more of what consumers are ultimately comfortable with in the context of those devices, and it's informational still. So that's where we focus a lot of our energy.
Yeah, I think for me, I would, without being able to see level 2 on a smart speaker, I think it'd be kind of weird. Like like how would you even know what to put a price in as, right? You'd need to see some flow or something, and that's more of a visual experience.
I mean, if you check out we've actually tried to create a verbal experience on it that has been pretty cool. So, if you check it out, it flows pretty well. Actually, the interesting place where we've gotten a lot of take rate on it is through folks that are disabled, so who are blind or visually impaired. They see that as a great mechanism to be able to participate in the markets because they can't see mobile devices.
Right.
So that's actually been a real boon for us.
Okay. What about something like WeChat and Facebook Messenger and all that? Is that a similar sort of paradigm where it's more about information than actually pulling a trigger on a trade?
Yeah, I mean, so we've done a couple of different models. On Facebook Messenger and on Apple Business Chat, we actually have enabled the capability to trade. So if people want to trade, move money, they can do those on those platforms. WeChat eventually, I think we'll get to the point where we want to enable a trade, but that's largely tied to us, really launching more heavily in the Asia Pacific market because that's where the WeChat ecosystem is. Right now, WeChat is more focused around education and account opening, which is where we see the traction in the near term around WeChat. But again, I think WeChat and the relationship with WeChat is a very strategic relationship for us because you got a billion users on that platform. That's and you've got Chinese people and other Asians who do the majority of banking, decision making, all on the WeChat platform. So I do think over time, whether it's either to facilitate a trade or to connect from the WeChat ecosystem to our trading platforms, I think there will be some tighter integration there. I mean, the way I probably would see it more evolving is that we probably won't do direct trading on the WeChat platform in the near term, just because I see that as more of a sophisticated style of trading that requires more information than could be easily provided on a platform like that. So I would more likely see us going towards a direct connection to our trading platforms from there.
Okay. Now, is the prism that you view these innovative projects, is it more about just capturing a next generation of assets?
I don't know if it's about assets. I mean, the way that I like to think about it is like we want to be where our clients are and allow them to access our capabilities anywhere at any time, right? And so we recognize that our clients are in different settings every day. So like California is one of our largest client populations. They're stuck on the highway for 2 hours in the morning when the markets are open. So if they want a real-time market update or they want to access their balances and positions when they're stuck in traffic, we want to provide them with a safe interface that they can do that while they're on the road. Our clients in the Asian market, Asians domestically and Asians in China, want to do a lot of their interactions on the WeChat platform, and so we want to be there because that supports the work style that they like. So it's more about being where the client is rather than focusing on some specific asset gathering target. Naturally, our hypothesis is that if we have more eyeballs, we're where the client is, then they're going to want to do more business with us at the end of the day.
What do you see the role for virtual reality in trading?
Yeah, I mean, virtual reality is a very interesting area because I think unlike some other advanced technologies like smart bots and artificial intelligence, it's been slow to gain adoption. I would say some of the new virtual reality devices have been a step forward with the new Oculus Go and some of the other new virtual reality goggles, but it still feels like a separate thing that's like not something that people feel as comfortable doing it at home. So while we've tried a few education things using like an Oculus Go and we've created some good experiences, people just don't seem to naturally gravitate towards it. More people still watch education via a mobile phone or a web browser or on TV as opposed to virtual reality. And I think virtual reality has got to merge into the places where our clients are like a TV or a phone or a web browser in order to really have that additional take rate. And right now, as long as it's like a separate standalone device, we see it really as a more of a almost like a gimmick in a way, in that, you're at a trade show or something like that, or you're at a conference and somebody's like, hey, look at this virtual reality experience. And people are like, oh, this is really cool, right? But I mean, over time, what we'll look at is things like, could you create like a branch type experience with an advisor, where you could do it via virtual reality, where, a virtual advisor could meet virtual clients. We'll test those things out. But I still think people's comfort with virtual reality is limited, and I think people would just prefer face-to-face video, frankly, over something that's virtual in nature.
Yeah, it's interesting. That one's the least baked of everything we've talked about, but yet I could almost see it from whether it's advisor perspective or even trading, right? Like you could almost see the setup where you could have visualizations over here, your watch list over here. Like I can almost piece it together in my head. But yeah, like you said, it's not baked at all. So
yeah, and it's still awfully slow too. The other thing, it's like I've got an Oculus Go, and especially if you start to get into more and more like graphics refresh and things like that. I mean, the thing starts to pixelate, and then people get frustrated because it's buffering. And unless you have, sort of a really robust internet connection, it's hard to get the level of quality that you'd want in that kind of an experience.
yeah, that and traders hate latency, so that would be a big issue to itself.
Most important thing.
Yeah, that is the most important thing. So out of evaluating these projects, how do you know when to pull the plug?
I think what we look at is metrics around visits of clients, activities of clients. Do those things seem to be growing? Are they stagnating? What's sort of the carrying and feeding associated with that thing? So what we'll typically do is launch something, look at it for a year, and if we don't see like, okay, either that ecosystem is growing or that product is getting any activity, then we'll make a strong consideration around it. I mean, Twitter is a good one. We launched Twitter, was one of our earliest launches of a conversational interface, and I think that we're in the phase right now where we're really looking at that one, because I don't know whether people see Twitter as a mechanism for looking for balances and positions information or account information or account transactions. They see it more as a secondary news source or more of a communication and sharing platform. Whereas Apple Business Chat, is much more of an active platform in terms of growth. And we see Apple continuing to invest in that platform around making it more of a mainstream commerce platform with some of the stuff they're doing around Apple Pay and extending some of those capabilities. So part of it is about a year in, we'll see, is the ecosystem continuing to grow or is it stagnant? And what's the activity rate? And what's sort of our investment required to continue to cultivate it? And then we'll make a call as to whether or not to sustain it or decommission it and invest somewhere else.
Okay. You mentioned Apple Pay. I think you've had some experiments along those lines. How has that worked out? And I guess, how does it work?
Yeah, Apple Pay, that's been great. So we've had, in just a very short period of time, we've seen good activity around Apple Pay. It's still, the way that it works is that you have to set up a debit card, within your Apple Pay ecosystem, and then you can access it through Apple Business Chat. And we're working to integrate that into our mobile property as well. But basically, there's a limit because debit cards have a limit as to how much you can actually transfer over per day. But I think of it sort of as a top-off feature. That's how I've described it. So you may be somebody who's a trader, and because of price fluctuations, you may be a few $100s short in your account to actually place the trade. It's a top-off mechanism where you can just say, hey, move $500 over, and then you can place the trade immediately, versus if you had to do it via ACH or something like that, you would miss the market opportunity. So I think it's been a really great top-off feature for us. It's not it's, maybe for a younger investor, like a millennial who just wants to start playing with the market. It's an easy way to get money into your account quickly. and funded. So we've found that to be very promising in terms of either a top-off feature or an initial investment feature for some of our younger clients.
Do you anticipate connecting to things like Venmo or the other payments?
Yeah, I mean, that's something that we're absolutely looking at right now, Venmo, PayPal, and what it would take to actually integrate. But funding is definitely one of the core areas that we want to experiment with some of these different providers. I mean, ideally, we'd be able to facilitate larger inflows of cash quickly through those platforms.
Okay. How often, what do you have to think through on the front end in terms of workflows? Like as you do these new platforms, how, like the voice, the smart speakers, how do you have to think through the actual steps of talking to your Ameritrade account?
Yeah, so I mean, that's a great question, because while they're any other user experiences, they are a different kind of user experience. It's called conversational user experience, right? As opposed to visual user experience. And so, early on, we brought in some partners who have had experiences designing a couple of these experiences for other companies, and they have sort of taken the licks for ones that weren't so successful, and then have come up with a methodology around how to design those experiences. And so we knew very little about building those experiences, and so we partnered with a couple of them, and they said, this is how you should go do it, right? And I think as we've launched more, they've gotten better. So like if you go back to like a Twitter one or a Facebook Messenger, we've learned how to improve those experiences over time by newer experiences that we've developed, and also market analysis around other people who have developed experiences and what have they done well, and how do we feed those into the backlog of those experiences. So we continue to evolve these experiences, but I would say the key is through some of the partnerships that we've partnered with some companies to get those experiences for ourselves.
Okay. All right. Is there anything I didn't ask that I should have?
Not that I can think of right now, Larry.
All right. Well, great. Thanks for joining us.